I'm Jim, Biker Jim from Biker Jim's Bikers and Bakers, and today we're making biscuits, man. A little different than probably some of the recipes you've seen online.
I'm gonna work the hell out of these biscuits.
Ooh, that's a pretty good looking biscuit. Oh my God, they're perfect. Do this. So for these biscuits, I have most of the ingredients laid out here. I tend to weigh everything out, and you should be able to find the recipe with this video. You'll find both weights and measurements in case you don't have a scale. But a scale is so handy when you're baking stuff. You want to add really, really cold butter. It doesn't really matter if they're all super well grated. I mean, if the majority of it is all nice and easy to deal with. It's stuck. Usually I use a knife or something to get these out of here, but yeah, which I should do. After you get done grating it, just wrap it up. Parchment paper, really handy. Get yourself some. You're going to find so many uses for it.
It's insane.
Here's my frozen butter after I've grated it. Now, you want everything in your biscuits to be super cold, so you try to operate pretty quickly. The reason for that is, the cold butter, the cold buttermilk, the cold yogurt. Oven's ready. That all comes together to kind of form these little steam pockets. In goes the sugar, salt, baking powder, and this is some cream of tartar that will help combine everything, kind of bring it together in its own little weird way. Whisk it in together. I'm dumping in the butter, man. Why you use parchment paper? There's a couple of different ways you could do this. If you wanted, you could throw all this into a food processor and process it kind of quickly, just pulse it. I tend to like to feel my food. I like to play with my food. And what you're looking to do is you're going to break this butter down, relatively quickly and just turn it into, make your flour mix kind of look like a really coarse cornmeal. It's okay if there's big lumps of butter in it, because what that's going to do is create little pockets of steam and, help your biscuits rise and be all buttery. That's beginning to feel pretty good in there. I mean, you can spend a lot of time doing it, but the idea is to kind of work quickly so you get this stuff in and done before everything gets too warm. See, it's all kind of beginning to look pretty coarse, like it's got butter all through it. I'm adding yogurt because instead of having this be just straight up buttermilk, and a lot of times you'll see buttermilk biscuits, I really like to add yogurt into it. It has a particular tang to it that you're not going to get from just straight buttermilk. And it also lightens it a little bit. The enzymes in the yogurt will help your
biscuits be maybe a little bit lighter,
which is good because
I'm going to work the hell out of these biscuits.
Most of the recipes that you're going to see are usually calling for a real light touch. We're not going to be that light with these guys. They're not going to get quite the same treatment that you'll see in a lot of other recipes. A couple eggs. And if you've noticed, I'm cracking the eggs on a flat surface. You know why you do that, right? You don't want to really crack your eggs on the edge of something because you're going to break the yolk. And I don't care about breaking the yolk here, but if you're frying eggs, you're going to break the yolk. And you're also going to get shells in whatever you're making. I'm using the dough hook, but I'm going to mix it in pretty quickly. Once again, like I said, we're trying to get this all combined fairly quickly so that the ingredients stay cold. We're trying to make a biscuit that is not only light and fluffy and delightful, but it's also going to hold together pretty well because we are going to make sandwiches out of these guys. When it starts to not stick so much to the side of the bowl, that's when you've got it mixed enough. And I'm going to call that enough. I could use the Formica work surface here to roll this out, but for some reason I just like to use a wooden cutting board. And in order to keep this board from moving around, I've got an old piece of shelf liner that I throw down here, and it keeps the board in place. Pull the dough out of here and work it. One thing that's pretty handy to have in cases like this, an Element Knife Company dough scraper. You're welcome, Elin. Throw down a little flour on the surface because it's going to stick. The idea is to not use a ton of flour. I still want this to be kind of moist, but I also want to be able to work it. Flatten it out and then fold one side in, fold one side in, fold another side in, and then flatten it out again. I'm going to do this like 3 or 4 times.
Fold one side in, fold one side in, fold another side in, and then flatten it out again.
Now you can use a rolling pin if you want. I don't really like to use a rolling pin that much. I still want it to not be overworked. The more you work the dough, the more it's going to develop gluten. Yes, I'm going to work the dough maybe a little bit more than some recipes call, but I'm not going to overwork the dough, if that makes any sense. This recipe is going to yield probably 9 or 10 pretty big biscuits. These will almost rival the Pillsbury Doughboy. Do you know he's got a hernia from people poking him in the belly so many times? Everybody's getting older, including the Pillsbury Doughboy. Okay, so this dough is just about where I want it. It's still cold to the touch. It's been rolled out several times, so there's going to be several layers to these biscuits. And I'm going to cut them. When you're cutting your biscuits, and this is probably a 3.5-inch biscuit cutter, you don't twist it. What you want to do is you want to push down. What that is, it keeps the edge on the biscuit pretty much standard all the way around. If you twist it, you're going to twist the edges a little bit. That's not what you're looking to do. And these biscuits are 1.5 inches tall or so. I want to make 8 biscuits out of this, so I'm going to punch them up this big. Cast iron is, if you don't mess up your seasoning, and I've had that pan for a long time, so it's seasoned really well. It's non-stick, but it just looks cool. You know, it gets even heat all the way around it. And what's going to happen is we're going to have a nice little pan of biscuits coming out of there, and you're going to go, oh, that looks really cool. That's why we do a lot of right? Yeah, it's going to be the same as baking it on here. In most biscuit recipes, at this point, they're going to be aghast that you have worked your dough this much. And, I get it, but if you think I'm overworking the dough too much, I'm doing this for a reason. Cooking biscuits where they touch is kind of cool because they'll sort of support themselves as they rise. I don't want my biscuits to just go. So I'm going to do one last thing before we pitch these into the oven, and I'm going to brush the tops with some melted butter. So this is a good salty butter. I might not have mentioned this, but the butter that went inside of this thing was unsalted. The nice thing about using unsalted butter when you're making something is that you can control how much salt goes into this thing. I'm going to honk these into a 425 degree oven, check them at 15. This oven is okay. If you've got a pretty high-tech convection oven, use that, but check it at about 12 to 14 minutes. These are some pretty nice looking biscuits. I'm excited. I'm also starving, so we shall be eating soon, my friends, soon. All right, so starving. We've been working all morning making biscuits. Well, let's take a look and see what it looks like inside of these guys. Ooh, that's a pretty good looking biscuit. Oh my God, they're perfect. Do this. But also, did you notice these biscuits aren't falling apart? That's why we worked them the way we did. So you can make a sandwich like this without it just crumbling into pieces, he says, right before it possibly crumbles into pieces. Let's see. Holy, I'm speechless.